Welcome to a good day. No, let me rephrase that. Welcome to a great day here on the My Identity Podcast. You are in for a treat. Today I sit down and have great conversation with a friend of mine, Lance Welch. Lance is a coach, he's an entrepreneur, he's an author, and he's just an all-around Renaissance man. So grab your favorite beverage, grab a bag of popcorn, your favorite person, curl up on your favorite chair, and get ready to ride here on the My Identity Podcast.
Welcome to the My Identity Podcast, where we like to say my DNA is different. Hear the conversations and stories from people learning how to engage life from an all things new reality. That your purpose and that your identity isn't determined by what you do. This is the My Identity Podcast with Duran Mahan.
To you today, wherever you are watching or listening to the My Identity Podcast, I'm excited. I've been excited about this next guest. This is a friend of mine that I've only known probably less than a year.
Yep.
He's the only thing that I have a little bit of a rub with him, and it's not that bad of a rub. It's manageable. He's a Louisiana guy, and anybody from the state of Louisiana bleeds purple and gold,
Amen.
As in LSU. I, on the other hand, understand the power of the crimson blood of Jesus that saves us, as in the Crimson Tide of Alabama.
Well, thanks for having me today.
Yeah, it was good to have you, Lance.
I'm out.
Lance, I lived 2 years in Louisiana, and I've got family that are LSU people, and there are no two better fan bases than LSU and Alabama. I mean, there's another school in West Georgia, we say, not East Alabama, but I have to be careful because I have family in that fan base as well. But they're not really a great fan base. They're just flat out delusional, and so we have to extend mercies to them. But we love them. How do you know I didn't say Auburn? Did anybody hear me say Auburn? No, I did not. I just said another university. Anyway, beyond all of that, it's not football season yet, but it is very close. So we're gonna have to have. Yeah, we already had week 0 in college football, so the real teams start playing this next weekend. But anyway, Lance, thank you for being with us today, man. I've been excited about this. You are an author now?
Soon to be.
Soon to be.
Yep.
Okay.
First book will be out by the end of the year.
By the end of the year. Tell us a little bit about the book.
It's called Legacy Navigator. One of my biggest passions is helping families create a legacy that's going to last. The work I did for years was all in the high net worth families, and the only thing they seemed to be focused on was how to transfer wealth to the next generation. But all the studies show that wealth will not make it. Typically, 90% of all wealth is dissipated by the third generation. So What we dig into is what are the other legs of the table. And when you, as a person of wealth or not, when you learn how to transfer your vision, your values, and your knowledge, now you've created a legacy that's going to make it. So that book is all about how do you create a legacy.
So this is going to be out the end of the year?
By the end of the year.
Okay. Wow. So the first time I met you, we were sitting at 1819 Coffee, and I saw very quickly that as far as you speaking and conversing with other people, you don't use a lot of wasted words and sentiments. It's like everything that you say has intentionality, but it has power. It has the power to produce. I like to look at it this way: you don't just allow life to happen to you, man. You jump on for 8 seconds and hold that bull and ride, man. And so I admired that about you. I was told by another mutual friend that I needed to meet with you, and so several months ago we met for coffee. And I just feel like I'm on the front end of this relationship, and I'm excited. Because I was talking with my wife probably about 3 months ago.
You haven't talked since then?
No, yeah, we like to meter out the time that we spend together. No, I'm actually next week we're celebrating 34 years together. So thank you, man. She's awesome. She keeps renewing my lease, so I keep showing up like a cat looking for a saucer of milk. But we were talking, and I said, you know how crazy it seems to me that over the last 3 years of our life, which that's when we've lived here and we joined the community, Hope You See, that we're a part of, the most meaningful relationships, aside from my best friend who I grew up with in Alabama, in Birmingham, and he lives in Cullman now, apart from him, our most meaningful relationships we've crossed paths with them within the last 3 years.
That's good.
And I'm 53 right now, and I'm like, wow. So I hit 50. I really do feel like a spring chicken. with a gray beard. So, it's kind of an odd thing. But what kind of motivated you to start writing in this direction?
Oh, wow. I had no intention of ever writing a book. Started writing one about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And it was about being an intentional father. And then had some things that I learned about some of my sons and the choices they were making. And it just devastated me to the point where I decided I didn't want to write anything. I actually got up to about 3,000 words on that one.
Really?
And I deleted it off the computer. And what I did have printed, I took down to the fire pit and burned. So immaturity.
Yeah.
I'm 57. So at your age is when I showed just a high degree of immaturity.
Yeah.
But it was one of those real strong wake up calls. It's like what I learned was that book was all about me.
Wow.
I did this, and that was not the message I really wanted to send. So when you talk about intentional words, thank you for that. It's like I still say plenty of things that I have to check myself on, or
Allison probably catches you on a few, right?
She absolutely does. That's her gift. It's a spiritual gift for her.
Spiritual gifting.
But there's such a high degree of intentionality in everything that we've done as parents. And, we're empty nest now. Well, kind of. My mother-in-law lives with me, but so we're semi-empty nest.
It's a whole other ball of wax, man.
It is. But it was actually my oldest son, that challenged me to write a book, because I'm building my coaching practice. He's like, Dad, I know what you can do. I know what you've done for decades. He said, but I need something to promote you with other than this is my dad.
Wow. Yeah.
And so it was actually his challenge about 12 weeks ago, that he's like, Dad, you got to write a book. And so searching the archives, what do I know and what is my passion, and thinking about legacy came about. And then came up with just a whole lot of iterations on names, and that's where Legacy Navigator. It's because getting to where you want to go, you got to chart a course.
That's exactly
You just
right.
can't wing it.
Yeah.
The one of the biggest risks of talented individuals is they're able to wing it once.
Yeah.
And it works, and then now winging it becomes that habit. And one of my mentors, John Maxwell, he's like, consistency compounds. So whatever you do on a consistent basis will compound. So if you wing it a time or two and it works,
right,
you begin to use that as your strategy, and whatever you do on a consistent basis, you begin to ingrain. So just being intentional on being a dad, a husband, speaker, trainer, developer of people, that's just what I love to do.
That's your passion.
It is.
I mean, you have 3 sons?
3 boys, 3 young men, 34, 31, and 29. So 2 grandkids.
And 2 okay. Well, now that completes that does, man. That gives you a whole new lease on life. It's
absolutely.
Of course, unless my dad and mom and my wife's dad and mom, I noticed them. They lose their mind. They take leave of their senses when grandkids are involved. Yeah. And so I'm kind of looking forward to that myself. I'll have a legitimate excuse to lose my senses, because there's times now that I can do that, and Tina's like, what do you? Not yet. You're not there yet. Yeah, hang on. But the whole concept of legacy and building. I mean, even it's a biblical principle from Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. I mean, and you see that all through history in Scripture, of just building family legacy, because we've seen so much of that from the other direction. I mean, how many times we've seen people pass on things that even in my own family. And that's why I was just kind of sitting here intrigued when we were talking about words before the show, and I was just like, man, just that one word, you pick up through the years ways of thinking that get ingrained that you're not even really aware of. But then when you go back and you're intentional about taking something and saying, okay, I've been saying a lot of this kind of phrasing or these kinds of words, and then when you do a retrospective and you look, you're like, well. And I've continued to get exactly what I've said. How do you think one, I guess at any age, obviously, but for somebody who's a little more seasoned, is that more challenging for them when you're coaching somebody? Is it more challenging for you to take someone that's gotten so used to things being ingrained in their neural pathways where they think, what do you do to lead somebody into a journey of, okay, let's change the way we speak and watch ourselves change as individuals?
I don't know that it's any harder for those that I get to work with. When you understand why you're doing something, or why you say something has a certain impact, you begin to self-coach. or self-correct. So the word we were talking earlier was the word need.
Yeah, I want to elaborate on that a little bit. That was so interesting to me.
That's just a habit that we've created over the years. I need this, or I need this. And, we were just talking about from just personal experience. I used to be a sales leader for a Fortune 100, actually Fortune 63, and had thousands of agents that I got to visit with. And anytime they said, I need to have a better year, or I need to make more income, what I learned is I could attribute about a 20 to 25% success rate that they would have a better year.
Yeah.
But those that would tell me, I will have a better year this year, or I'm going to have a better year, just changing the word, it allowed me to put about a 75 to 80% success rate on them, just because they had a different challenge. So when you talk about someone that's in their 50s or 60s that are used to using the words like I can't. Now, we're always taught as kids, don't use I can't, I can.
Right.
But how many times have you come across people with, they're like, oh, I can't afford that.
Yes.
Now, technically, they probably could.
Right.
There's some really nice restaurants here in Nashville, and Bourbon Steakhouse is one of my favorites, and it's real easy for you to think, well, I can't afford that. Well, you do probably have the money you could go, but when you say I can't afford it, you're reinforcing a mindset of lack, of poverty, or people that I get to work with. Oh, I can't afford that. You can't afford not to.
Yeah.
And the real question, this is a little simple change. Instead of saying I can't, ask the question, how can I?
How can I?
Because with that phrase, how can I, it creates the brain to start working on your behalf instead of working against you. I have people that write down, and I read this, so I can't quote the source, but your mind processes data at the rate of 40 bytes per second. And that's fast. So it's like if I were to say on the count of three, when I say three, blink your eyes. When I said three and you blinked, the distance or time between three and your blinking would be indiscernible. You wouldn't even really notice it.
Wow.
That's 40 bytes per second.
Yeah.
But your subconscious mind, it processes data at 40 million bytes per second. So while you make a declaration of I can't afford it or I need XYZ, those are weak words. You're going about your business. Your subconscious mind is validating over and over and over, and it begins to look for reasons why you can't afford something, or it reinforces a position of lack, need, or poverty.
So it sets you up for the inability to do what you just said. I mean, that's
you get what you fight for.
Yeah. Well, I was just talking last night. I was talking to my kids before they went to bed, and we were kind of reminiscing. My 92-year-old grandmother just passed away last night at about 6:00, and it's such a celebration on a lot of fronts. But that just kind of triggered some things of memories. I turn into a nostalgic Nimrod so easily, and especially when my kids are growing up, And so I was sitting there, and we were talking about the power of words. Somehow we reached that, and I was just talking about some of the challenges that I've had in my life, and the areas of challenge or these things that I try to fight through, these issues. Related to those issues and those challenges, I can go back and remember words that were spoken to me or even about me to someone else from the time I was just a child. And I can still remember those, and I know geographically where I was and how it made me feel. But they just said the words flippantly, just off the cuff.
Right.
But it was the power of just those spoken words that, like a ripple effect, they might have been said 45 years ago, but they dropped, and I heard them. They registered. I began to dwell on them. I began to think, well, what if that's? And through the years, I time after time would run into walls and struggles that were related to the way I allowed those words to be processed by me. And so when you're raised by a family or your grandparents who were raised in the Depression era, where lack was the norm,
right?
But it's so easy to fall into that pattern unless you. I mean, it's got to be. You have to put your foot down, and it's got to be an intentional. That stops here, because to create legacy, I've had to get militant about certain things from my past because I was just determined. I don't say I need to stop that from heading into my future generations. I get pretty nasty in a way.
That's what it takes.
Yeah. So how do you, when someone comes to you, because our identity can also be so influenced by how we allow words to enter in. So when someone comes in, how long does it take? Like in your coaching, I mean, when you're just kind of getting acquainted. You probably are getting a pretty good read on kind of where their identity is centered early on.
First visit. I have a client now that she consistently used the word, the things I struggle with. The things
like I just said a minute ago.
You did, which is what prompted me to remind.
Yeah.
But when I challenged her on it, that is a struggle. She's making a declaration of, this is what I struggle with.
Yeah.
That's going to keep her struggling with that from this day forward.
Wow.
And so we revamped the words, and it says, the things I'm overcoming, the things I'm working on, the things I'm overcoming. And you should have seen her face. It was like a light bulb came on, and she said, that's part of my identity.
Man, that's so good.
It's exactly what she said. And so now there's a phrase that you can use, up until now. That is like drawing a line in the sand, and your mind at this point recognizes, up until now, I've struggled with this.
Yeah.
But this is something I'm overcoming. So little frameworks that you can do for yourself to get yourself back on track. Now that she's aware of that word, whenever she uses it, she's really quick to correct herself.
Yeah.
And when you self-correct, it's like putting a stamp on your neural pathways. This is not me anymore. So she is literally changing her identity with getting rid of weak words.
I cannot tell you how many times, even recently, and especially we mentioned, I sometimes go to football because there's so much analogy there that I can identify with that.
Absolutely.
But I have made the statement, my struggle is dealing with competition in a healthy way. But I know in my own mind, in saying that through the years, there was some twisted thought of, that will endear me to people. I'm being transparent. I'm being open and honest by being honest with my struggle. And I see there's a place for being real with what you have dealt with and what you do have to overcome. But when you continually refer back to it as though you're still, there's an ownership thing.
Yeah,
so it's still
saddled. Look at your hands right there.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you do. You're hanging on to it.
No doubt, man. That's so good. Now I'm getting some free coaching right here on the show, man. I don't know if I'm going to get a bill for this later, but so good, man. So you mentioned you're a father, and so the challenges of just being able to instill identity in as a parent and now as a grandparent. But even go back before that, I want to know a little bit about your history with how you met your wife and how she taught you all this stuff that you're an expert at today.
We met on a Sunday after church. So I went to church with my grandparents. We went to our favorite little barbecue place in Springfield, Missouri, and Allison was my waitress.
Really?
Yep. And she'll tell you today, she's still waiting on me.
It's an unpaid waiter.
Her words. She will also tell people, even now, she goes, I raised 4 boys. We only have 3 sons. But
right. You were the fourth.
I was the fourth.
Did y'all marry young?
23 and 22.
Okay.
So relatively young. We knew each other a whopping 10 months before we got married.
Oh, a lot of depth.
8 months, got engaged. Yeah, a lot of people thought we had. We didn't.
Yeah.
But that was what the thought was.
Sure.
But yeah, so we knew what we wanted, looking for. And the first year, great.
Yeah.
Been married 35 and a half years. 32 and a half are probably really good.
Yeah.
But there was a space there in the year 2 through 4, 2 through 5. Not so good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got pregnant 6 months after getting married, and ended up moving to Shreveport, Louisiana, and it was one of those scenarios. It was just a perfect storm for things to go the wrong way. She and I are both firstborns.
Oh wow!
And we lived on our own for a while. So then you've got the strong personality with the strong personality, and if you're familiar with DISC profile,
oh yeah.
So I'm a DI, and she is a CS.
I'm an IC.
Okay, so that's a unique combination.
Yeah, crazy.
But the C people, they're literally the smartest people in the room, and they know it.
Yeah.
But your D people, they think they're the smartest. So you take my D personality who thinks I'm right.
Oh wow.
With her C personality who knows she's right, and it was
all kinds of fun, wasn't it?
All kinds, and so it really is. It's a miracle that we are together.
Yeah.
The grace of God is just all over it. But when I'd get off work, I had a choice. I could go home and start fighting at 6.
Yeah.
Or I could go into inner city Shreveport and be one of the only white guys on the court, get my ego, because that was my sport, is basketball, and feel really good for a couple of hours and then go home and fight. And that's what I chose to do.
Delay the inevitable.
I did. And, so there was a a friend of ours that I did not give him permission to climb over my walls because I had some really good fortified walls.
Sure.
I had a massive performance identity. We could talk for hours on that.
Yes, we
it's
could.
It's ingrained in us from school, through college, through sports. I'm only, or sales, corporate.
Yeah.
I'm only as good as how I performed yesterday.
Yeah.
And so when that performance identity is met with any type of rejection, it could be explosive.
Yeah.
And this guy looked at me, and we say cuss words on here?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
He looked at me after we'd been playing basketball.
Yeah.
And he was sitting in his vehicle, and he looked at me and he goes, "Hey, can I tell you something?" Sure. I guess I did give him permission, but I didn't know where he was going. He said, "You're being an ass to your wife."
Yeah.
And I just sat and stared at him like, "You have no right to talk."
He
to me.
went there. Yeah.
He did. And, brief conversation, he said, "If you ever need me, I don't care if it's 2 a.m., you call, I'll be here." Dude, I won't need you.
Yeah.
I was arrogant, 23 years old, had all the answers. About 2 weeks later, it was 2 a.m. and put a hole in the sheetrock. I called him, and he was there in 10 minutes.
Wow.
So that was our early marriage. And so from there moving forward, it's been about, rebuilding trust, which took a long time because I violated a lot of it.
Yeah.
Get into corporate America, and I traveled constantly as far as, how did we get to here? Why are we so intentional?
Right.
John Maxwell, I think I told you, he was one of my mentors. I'm a coach in his organization. And I traveled with corporate every 6-7 weeks in a row, and then I'd be home for a week. And I knew that for me to have a good relationship with my wife and sons, I was going to have to be incredibly intentional.
Right.
So that was really the start of it. Is a lot of the content that I work with my clients is how can you excel in business? If you're corporate, how do you climb the corporate ladder? How do you not have the performance identity? Your value is far greater than what your numbers did yesterday. And how do you be an amazing husband, amazing father? It would be up for debate between my wife and I on whether I'm an amazing husband.
Yeah.
But we are.
I'm sure she shows some grace, man.
She'll show grace. But we were very, very intentional.
Yeah.
And we've got several things. I mean, if you want to hear any about it, as far as getting on the same page, do you?
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is the Lance Hour right
All
here.
Right. One of the things that we work with couples, and I'll send this to you for you and Tina.
Okay.
But maybe I can work with Brandon on creative ideas on branding, but it's called First Friday. Real creative form. Guess when we use it?
Probably Friday.
The first Friday. The first Friday of every month. With all the travel I used to do, we had to be intentional to get on the same page. So on the first Friday of every month, I'd kick out work-wise at 2 in the afternoon, and we'd go over to this little restaurant on a golf course, and we'd sit there from 2 to 5, and we'd review what took place the last month. Because the compensation, I was mainly overrides and bonuses.
Right,
so
right.
we could review it. Here's what's going to be coming in this next month.
Yeah.
But here's what's going on with the boys from her perspective. Here's what my calendar looks like for the next month. Here's what the boys' calendar looks like for the next month. And then it would be, who are we spending time with? Who do we need to spend more time with? Who do we need to avoid spending some time with? Because not everybody in your life is going to be life-giving.
That's so true,
But at the same time, there's people in your life that you're not in it for you.
Right.
You're in it on what you can provide to them.
Exactly.
So it's a one-pager, and it's got a lot of preset questions that you guys, you would go through. You would answer what you feel led to answer. A lot of the clients, the guys that I work with, it's their strength isn't in the level of communication below the surface.
Right.
So this thing gives them some preset questions that they can use, and it absolutely does an amazing job of just getting you guys on the same page.
Wow. So you do personal coaching and marriage coaching.
Apparently, a lot of counseling, yeah.
It is. What was it? So what your passion for coaching? Was it so it was born out of your own experiences and just what you had seen in your own lives? Yeah. So
growing up in corporate, I mean, this was a massive organization. I mean, you're Fortune 63. What I got to see is a lot of the promotions took place through attrition. Right? It's like you just had to outlast the other people.
Yeah,
the really good people got recruited away, and a lot of those that left got promoted because they stayed.
Yeah.
So that organization I was with, great organization, but they did nothing for leadership development. And so when I got introduced to John Maxwell, I began to hire my own coach way back before that was popular.
Really? Yeah.
Do you remember cassette tapes?
Yes, I do.
Do you think most of the audience is going to remember cassette tapes?
There may be 3 or 4 that will not raise their hand, but they do remember.
Well, John Maxwell had a monthly cassette tape club.
Yeah.
Maximum Impact Cassettes, MICs.
Yes, I remember seeing those. Yeah, my dad had those.
And then they transferred up to discs, right?
Oh, yeah.
So there was just, my number one clients were my 3 sons. And they were my client before they realized they were clients.
Yeah.
But I used everything that I'd learned from John Maxwell in my leadership role at the corporate role.
Yeah. Wow, man. So, funny story about John Maxwell. My college roommate is a guy named Mark Cole.
Oh, yeah.
Who now is
Leads it.
Yeah, he leads it. So Mark and I, if you're watching, I probably don't have time to right now, but you might. Mark and I, both of us preachers, Pentecostal preachers' kids, we were freshmen the same time at Bible college. And the background that I was brought up in prohibited going to watch movies at theaters or movie houses.
Yeah.
And same with Mark. So freshmen in college, what do we do on our first week there? Let's go catch a movie. So Mark Cole and I just kind of snuck out, violated the policy of the school, policy of our denomination, and we went to see a movie together. And so I've got that skeleton hanging over his head. If he ever gets too high and mighty, I'm just going to remind him.
You just announced it to the
I
world.
did. I just outed him right here on the My Identity podcast. But you know what? It was just it was a great movie. It was worth the sneak out. But Mark is a great guy. I've had a couple conversations with him through the years, and just an awesome guy.
He started at one of the lowest ranks you could be in his organization.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
What a story, man. What a story.
Yeah.
Well, now you're also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I mean, has that been pretty much your entire marriage? I mean,
No.
is that okay?
Yeah, I was corporate all that time.
Okay.
One of the catches with corporate is as you grow in that corporate ladder and you move up, you begin making more and more money.
Yeah.
And then it gets to the point where you're making too much money to just quit and go do your own thing.
Yeah.
And so I was even telling my wife just yesterday, I said, I didn't realize I had an entrepreneurial bent until really in the last week or two, because 18 years at Allstate, I didn't have the same role for more than 2 or 3 years.
Wow.
So I was constantly looking for something new. So
Yeah.
that is the epitome of most entrepreneurs. But I came up in corporate. I mean, we grew up so poor. It was one of those things. It's like, you're going to go to school and you're going to get a real job, and you're going to stay there for 40 years.
Yeah.
Right. So that was, my era. My sons, totally different. They all 3 went to school, went to college, University of Memphis for about 2 years.
Yeah.
They got in 2 years and decided this is taking way too long. I don't know if they planned and orchestrated it, but they had the same path, but they quit, hired coaches and consultants instead of going to school, and they've just exploded. So as a dad, it's like, you're going to do what?
Yeah.
No, you got to stay in school.
Right.
What are you going to do? But each one of them gave me a plan. This is what I'm going to do. And, as a dad, I'm there to support them. One of the things that they used to get so frustrated with me is, I'm not here to be popular. I'm here to get you to the next level.
That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
And my job in that point was to help them get to the next level. If it wasn't school, how can I support them? And I remember the first time Taylor, the oldest, told me he was going to start his own thing. I was like, dude, you can do anything you want to do.
Yeah.
And give him some resources, here's some structure, and give him whatever I could. I remember going home and telling my wife, she said, we better be praying for Taylor and Lindsay. Why? And I'm like, I think they're going to be moving back in with us pretty quick. That's how much faith I had in what he was going to do. Had no idea it was going to explode the way it did. And the level of success that they've had has been amazing. And, people was like, well, you got to be, I am proud of them, but I also know all I did was plant a few seeds. Other people came in and they would nurture and fertilize and water. And so it's been fun to watch that. But one of the things that I can tell you what we did with them is I knew as a dad, I had a very limited scope. I was very competitive, kind of like what you described. Yeah. I was the type of guy that could take the fun right out of a card game.
That's guilty.
So it's like, If I'm not winning and I'm not having fun, you're not going to have fun either.
You're not either. Yeah. There's no such thing as just playing for fun.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Well, if I'm winning, I'm having fun.
Sure. Oh, that's a blast then.
Yeah. And there's a funny story on that with my wife that didn't go too well either. If we want to get into that, but I ended up with a racket in the back of my head because she wouldn't have as much fun as I was.
And she was going to bring you to the fun, the level she was at. She was like, well, I'll just give him a taste of what I'm experiencing.
Yeah, exactly. But what I did for them is when they turned 13, I got to where I would check them out of school. Found out it was an unapproved absence because I was hurting their education, but I would check them out of school to take them with me to leadership events. You know, John Maxwell used to have an annual Maximum Impact simulcast.
Yeah.
So I'd check the boys out of school on that day, and they would go with me to the event. Because I wanted them to be around other leaders and recognize that they are not inferior to, not superior to.
Yes.
But there's no reason to be afraid about being around. I just wanted them to recognize these guys are normal.
How old were they at this time?
At their once they turned 13.
Okay, yeah.
So there's a great book for dads with sons called Raising a Modern Day Knight by Robert Lewis.
Yeah.
Highly recommend that. But it was kind of that premise is once they turn 13, they get to start going and learning some leadership. Now, did they learn anything at those? Probably not, but I still believe that there was a seed planted.
Yeah.
In those early years, Patrick Lencioni was always the MC. And Taylor does remember that name, but he was mainly going because Chick-fil-A sandwiches was what was for lunch.
That's the incentive right there.
That was the incentive. But all three of them, that's one of the things that we did. And as a dad who had, my skill set was very competitive in sales. I did mainly, most of my career was in sales or sales and leadership.
Right.
So I'd get another dad that had a totally different background from me. And I would, in this case, Ron, would you mind taking Taylor to lunch and just getting into his world, let him ask you some questions?
Yeah.
And we had him do that, once a quarter. It wasn't anything heavy or anything, but one of the guys that did it was our dentist. But all through school, he was dyslexic, but they didn't know about it, and they thought he was slow, so they had him in all the remedial classes.
Yeah.
Once he learned that, he was a firefighter. He went back to school and became a dentist. Well, that's an experience I couldn't expound on.
Right.
Another one was one of my sales leader friends. He's a black gentleman that was a sales leader. I have no idea what it would be like to be a black gentleman in corporate America.
Yeah.
Incredibly gifted man, but he had a passion for developing the next generation. He'd take him to lunch, once a quarter. So they got experience from other folks.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of developing legacy is giving them a little bit broader view of what is life and recognize it's not just only dad.
Yeah.
I'm limited.
Well, I was just thinking that how revolutionary that concept is because of just even in generations before me, there was such there was an insecurity that was masked by something else, but the dad just hard always didn't want their kids exposed to a lot of things. That the concept that you're describing is so revolutionary to me because my dad was that way. My dad was a minister. He pastored, most of his life. But there was something about my dad, and I would notice him around his contemporaries. My dad, he was always, most of the time that I remember, my dad was bivocational. And my dad was a person, and somehow in my interpretation of that, even as a younger person, I kind of deduced, well, that's why my dad's ministry is so pure. I've never seen a man that loves people and shepherds people the way my dad does. Now, there's been times between my mom and myself that we've kind of noticed, Dad, you probably need to go have your discernometer maybe put on a diagnostics machine. You need to have that checked and tuned up a little because he just, but that's going to happen when you're continually reaching for people. Not everybody is going to, is going to be a healthy connection. It's not going to be a success story or whatever. But my dad never let that keep him from loving people. When we traveled in itinerant ministry when I was about 12, 13 years old, my dad would go to a company in Dallas called Maxim Steel, and he would buy cutlery, cookware, different things. And when we were in towns, either my brother and I doing concerts or my dad speaking, we had an off week. We'd get in a hotel. My dad would get out, and he would go, and he would knock doors. He would cold call. He would sell. He would always do that kind of stuff. But my dad was always successful at doing that because he didn't seem like what you would sometimes even unfairly classify as a salesperson going door to door, selling Bibles or encyclopedias or vacuum cleaners or something. But he loved people so much that when he was literally a case that when people, they might not have needed cutlery, but they loved my dad. And so, you know what? I like this guy. I'm going to buy him. Whatever he's selling is just a delightful bonus, but he is what I'm really buying. And so seeing that, but my dad would always provide opportunities for my brother and I to be exposed to other ways of thinking, just different people, because Dad was always so secure in his manhood. If he wasn't, he mastered, he knew how to fake it like a master, but he was so secure. And my dad's about 5'6", very quiet. He will never talk any louder than what I'm talking right now, but just a stalwart of a man. And he let us see these things. And I grew up thinking that was the norm. That's every dad's that way, supposed to be, especially in ministry. If you're in church, that just kind of comes along with learning the King James Version, and you just do that. But it was such a rarity. And even as I got older, I begun to see these concepts were so rare in the construct of Christianity that I grew up in. And so I think there's such a field, the term we use is a mission field, even sitting on church pews and in church communities throughout the country and the world. These habits, these intentional things that you do to create legacy, because it doesn't just happen. Legacy doesn't just happen. So when you're taking on a coaching client, is it more of a personal development thing, or do you have targeted paths? Obviously, whoever's coming in, but what do you encounter the most as far as your type of coaching?
Well, most of them are business related.
Okay.
It's within weeks we end up crossing that barrier into personal.
Okay.
But what I've found is people they haven't shown a tendency to pay for personal development. They will pay for business coaching.
Yeah.
And it's easier to measure performance and return on investment on the business side. Right. I've got a client you would know if I were to give his name, but through the midpoint of this year, he'd earned more in 6 months in 23 than all of 22. Well, that's measurable.
Yeah.
But he will tell you the biggest impact is on his family.
Okay.
And
wow.
You know them, but not that they had a bad family or a bad marriage,
right?
But the level of intentionality is up 10x.
Yeah.
And the things that he is doing with his children before bedtime that wasn't being done before he said it's just amazing.
Yeah.
They're loving it. His wife loves it. One of the things that I have my clients do is we do a weekly, what we call a VIP meeting, where that VIP is you. You have a 1-hour meeting with yourself every week. And during that meeting, it's thinking time. And it's the how can I type questions. And you carry those questions in. It had so changed his business by doing that. His wife said, I want one of those. Because they homeschooled. So she has her own VIP meeting.
Wow.
Each week because of that level of tenacity and intentionality.
Yeah.
So a couple things. You said something a while ago. My dad is only 5'8".
Really?
Yeah. So I'm 6'4".
Yeah.
So senior night at basketball, it was kind of interesting.
I bet it was.
But when you think, and I didn't even think about this until now, but the legacy started way before I had an interest in it.
Right.
My dad would work 2 and 3 jobs, but he never missed a single basketball game. Never.
So good. Yeah.
And I don't know how. I don't know how he was able to pull it off working that many jobs, but family was so incredibly, or is.
Yeah.
They're still with us. My mom and dad, it's all about family.
Yeah.
And, so the legacy, it's like, and they've been married 59 years now.
Yeah.
They had everything stacked against them. I was conceived out of wedlock.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know if they'll listen to this, may not be happy with me sharing that, but they had every reason to not go forward. And they ended up getting married, and they are still married 59 years later.
Wow. What a story.
It's amazing. Now I've already forgot what the other question was.
No,
coaching.
Yeah,
when they come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a definite process.
Okay.
A lot of it is just creating some structure. If someone were to ask what's the biggest benefit that they get, it's we enhance the level of clarity to the point where you don't even hardly recognize yourself or your business 12 weeks from now.
Man.
And when you're clear on what you want, it's incredibly easy to say no to anything that's a distraction.
Right.
And we are met with distractions all the time.
They're multiplied in today's culture. It's
absolutely
exponentially. Yeah.
We call it the 3 Ds of mediocrity, and it's distraction, dispersion, and drift. Distraction is the shiny object syndrome. Dispersion is where you're dispersed. Your energy you've got so many things, so many rods in the fire, you can't stay focused.
Right.
And drift is you're doing these other 2 things so much, you're drifting away from the things that are important, usually including your marriage and your kids.
Yeah.
So
wow, man.
There's a lot that goes into it, but creating clarity is just incredibly powerful.
I can't wait. The book, I mean, that's going to be phenomenal to read that.
Something about the book you mentioned a while ago, we talked about intentionality.
Yeah.
One of the things in it, we talk about the legacy, the intentional version versus the non-intentional, because you will have a legacy.
Yeah.
It's just, is it one you want?
Right.
Or is it one that is created?
One that's dealt.
Have you heard of the comparison between Jonathan and Sarah Edwards
I haven't.
and the Jukes family?
I think you shared this story with me, but I don't know. But I want to hear it again.
Because I can share send the excerpt to you, but they did a study on the Edwards family, and it was a 150-year study. Looked at the lineage. What did they do with the life of the Edwards family? There's about 1,400 descendants in that 150 years. And it is notable of one vice president, several gubernatorial elected officials, multiple college presidents, some from theological schools, multiple professors, pastors, high-level exec. It's like when you look at that list, it's the who's who of an amazing family. What Jonathan did, they had 13 kids, what he did every night was he individually prayed over each child. Now, oftentimes I talk about you got to choose your inconvenience.
Right.
It was incredibly inconvenient, I'm sure, to do that.
Yeah.
The converse of that, it would have been much more inconvenient later if he wouldn't have.
Sure.
It's like it would be inconvenient to become a servant leader with your family and your wife.
Right.
It's inconvenient. It puts you out. You have to go out of your way. If you don't, the inconvenience you'll deal with later is much greater.
Oh, absolutely.
So you get to choose your inconvenience.
Yeah.
The Jukes family, they don't even know the name of his wife and how many there were. Self-proclaimed atheists. About 1,300 descendants in his group in that same 150-year span. Majority of them spent time in prison. Majority, like over 300 died from drug or alcohol overdoses. 400 plus were known prostitutes. And so the state of New York actually did a study not too long ago to figure out that family, that lineage, cost the state in those days, those dollars, $1.2 million to the state for incarcerations and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like you've got intentional Edwards praying over his family every night, and you have the Jukes family who did nothing intentional. Both of them have an amazing legacy.
Yeah.
But only one would you want to replicate.
Wow, that's powerful. I was sitting here talking to you before thinking about just the one aspect of the words. And that to me that personally, I'm maybe being a little selfish here, but that to me is worth the whole day, because as you're saying that, I was reflecting right between. I was thinking, what other phrases have I said that I didn't even know? But before we kind of get ready to wrap this up, I'm going to ask you the rapid fire questions in a little bit. But can you give us right off the cuff just a few other phrases that might be commonplace that we don't realize that we say that kind of create that kind of outcome?
Yeah, even the word want, for example, it is not a power. There's a book out called Power versus Force.
So we got need and want.
Need, well, it's like hierarchies.
Okay.
So when you look at this guy's graph, one of the lowest vibrational frequencies is the word apathy. And you have to move up the chain to get to a positive. There's like 200 is the score from this guy, David R. Hawkins, the book's Power versus Force. But apathy is the lowest rank.
Right.
Anger is still way below the midline, but anger is much more powerful than apathy. And so their need is one of your weaker words. Want is better and more powerful than need, but it's still a position of life. Think about it from a psychological perspective. I want more time. What does that imply? I have a lack of.
Lack of time. Yeah.
I'm short. I'm in lack. So I'm professing a poverty of, I want more money.
Right.
I'm professing I have lack. So it's better than I need, because we could beat that dead horse, but there's so many examples on that. Things like, I can't afford this.
Yeah.
Well, how can I? I don't have time for this. How can I? So there's just so many, but it's struggle. We talked a little bit about that.
Yes.
I struggle, I need, I can't, I want. Even the word hope. Now, we know hope is a powerful word, but it is not a strategy.
Right.
John Maxwell says it all the time. You have to have it. It's faith, hope, and love. It's a positive word, but it is not a strategy.
Not a strategy.
I hope to have more business. Okay, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So 2 of the most powerful words that you can ever use in the English language and even from the Hebraic, and when I mention it to you, it's going to click. You're going to recognize where it came from. The 2 most powerful words in the English language are the words I am.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, where did that take your mind back to?
Yeah. The great I am.
Who said it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
When you use those words, it is a declaration that is so impactful, so powerful. If I were to we'll just test it. We've not ever discussed this, but I need to lose weight. I am going to lose weight.
Yeah.
Was there a different frequency?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I said them with the same pace.
Right.
I paused at the same place, same volume. One has power.
Yes.
One has lack. If I say to you, I need to lose weight, you can count on it. I'm not going to.
Right. You'll be saying the same thing 6 months from now.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am going to lose weight.
Right. Yeah.
You better book it.
Yeah.
So so when you really get serious about something, I am going to make my marriage better. All right, now I believe you.
Well, to me, I am is also a statement of identity.
True.
Yeah. I mean, it puts you in more of a place of authority. And I mean, that's, wow, that's so compelling, man. Just, are you going to have a list in the back of the book of these phrases?
There's several exercises in the back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And one of them is power words, power phrases. What are your values?
Man.
Yeah, there's a list of about 150 words that you can choose from, and it's a painful exercise. I can just tell you.
Very revealing. Yeah.
Well, it's that, and it's just hard.
Yeah.
Because none of us really think about what are the 5 key characteristics that represent you and your family. This list is 150 words, and these are all good words. And when you go through the first time, the exercise is you just put a tick mark by them. First time I did it, I had over 50. And then you got to whittle that down to 5. But once you do that, the level of clarity of what does Duran stand for is crystal clear.
Yeah.
And when you're clear on what you stand for, your identity, your energy, your focus, your intention, everything then becomes aligned.
Yeah.
And when there's alignment, you make things happen.
Yeah. Wow. That's powerful, man. Do you know that you gave me a list about 2 months ago of some books, and they will be delivered tonight by Amazon.
Oh, wow.
Because I'm heading to Destin with my wife next week to celebrate our 34th anniversary. And so that's my beach reading, man.
Fantastic.
So I'm gonna be putting that to practice. But man, this has been enlightening. I need to have you back.
You need to?
You're gonna see. There we go, man. You don't realize how. Yeah, I'm gonna have you back unless you already have your own podcast very soon, because I could see this being something that would be.
Yeah, I don't feel called to have a podcast, but I didn't feel called to have a book either. So who knows?
Well, those are usually the ones that probably need to do it, man. That don't go around passing out their business cards. That, hey, I'm called to do this and that and the other. But man, thank you for being here, Lance. This is powerful. And the thing that I love about what you're saying is when I had my health scare and when I was 49 years old, I felt like, and I knew, and I know even more now, that it was a hard reset for me and on so many levels. But part of that is the intentionality of the words that I speak and understanding. And I've heard that my whole life. Words have power. Power of life and death are in the tongue.
True.
But putting it where it's really right here and not something you're hearing like a parrot, but it's something that, hey, this is true. This is applicable to me. and this is my future now. And that was one aspect of beginning to be more intentional about what I said and about how, just how I convey, even not letting my feelings be what convey my words, but more the reality of who I am. And so that's just, I feel like I've started over. And so with that, in that respect, I'm really 2 years old. No, 49, no, that's 4 years old. Yeah, math was hard.
Well, you just triggered something else. When you wake up of a morning, it is real easy to just fall into how do you feel.
Sure.
A lot of times we will let what our schedule is, what it looks like today, to dictate. If I know I have a tough conversation at 2 o'clock, I may wake up in the morning feeling a little heavy or a little lack of encouragement. A great way to offset that is to ask this question. You ready? This is so simple, but it is so powerful. What do I believe?
What do I believe?
What do I believe?
Wow.
Now talk about your identity. When you come in, what do I believe? When I was journaling this morning, my identity of who I am as a son has been ramped up a lot since coming to Hope UC. I've always known I was loved.
Yeah.
But I felt it was because he had to love me.
Sure, obligation, yeah.
Yeah, he created me, so he has to love me. But think about a son. If one of my sons knows I love him, but I'm not infatuated with him, that I'm not. When he comes to me to ask a question, he may be afraid to.
Yeah.
And if he does, he's not asking with confidence.
Sure.
But when he knows he is deeply loved and he has unconditional access to me in my room, when he comes in to ask me something, it's a different level of ask.
It is.
And it's going to be a different level of response.
Yeah.
Talk about identity.
And that's what we were encouraged to do. Let us therefore now come boldly before the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find help in our time of need.
And if you don't know you're a loved son, you're going to be afraid to go in there.
Absolutely. Wow. And this is good. This is one of those episodes that you're just like, no, we need to continue. We need to keep going. We need to keep, But I will have you back. All right, but now we're going to get to it. Now we're going to just lighten it up just a little bit, if that's okay. So we've got off into some really good stuff, and this is, I don't know how we're going to do reels for this because there's just so much gold, man. Wow, that's crazy.
Here's one for you. Go Tigers.
No, that is not a power word. That's a lucky voodoo phrase is what that is. All right, man. Number one, we're going to get into the mind of Lance just on the little more shallow level, but we're going to go there anyway. Mountains or beach?
Mountains.
Thank you.
Heartbeat.
Amen. Now, I think you already answered this in one of what you said a while ago, but basketball or football?
To watch or to play?
Just sport, all the way around, universally
Basketball.
speaking. Basketball, okay. Concerts or movies?
Movies.
Movies. Okay, now on movies, a rom-com or drama? Or action?
Action.
If you'd have said rom-com, we were not going to ever air this episode. No, all right. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Morning, for sure.
Yeah, that was a no-brainer.
Guess what my wife is?
Probably a night owl.
She is.
Yeah. Okay, so there's, Lord help them there. But all right, here's one. I've never asked this question before, but because you're a manly man, you're a dude, I'm just going to ask you. John Wayne or Chuck Norris?
Chuck.
Chuck Norris.
No hesitation.
No hesitation. So you're not a Duke fan then?
No, he's okay.
He's all right, but
Chuck is the only one that can sneeze with his eyes open.
There you go. Chuck's become legendary. He's become mythical.
He is.
In my generation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Thank you so much for being here, Lance. Man, this has been really rich.
Appreciate
Look
you
forward to
having
having
me.
you back. Thank you guys for tuning in today on the My Identity Podcast. Tune in next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Take care. Have a great one. Hey, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the My Identity Podcast. We're excited that you tuned in and you made an investment of your time into this podcast. It means a lot to us here. I want to encourage you to stop by every week because we've got new episodes baking in the My Identity kitchen, and they're going to inspire, they're going to encourage you, they're going to give you something to make it through your week. So I want to invite you to click the little subscribe button here on YouTube, and not only on YouTube, but you can also subscribe on whatever podcasting platform you get your podcasts on. You can follow, like, and listen every week. As each new episode comes down the pipe, you're going to love it. And we are honored that you spend the time here with us on the My Identity Podcast. We'll see you soon.